Hey guys, welcome to another video on the Inside Spurs channel. Happy Monday morning to you all. Hope you're all okay. Hope you're all right. Hope the weekend treated you all as well as my weekend treated me. But in this video, we are talking about some reports surrounding Spurs and a potential move this week. Well, starting move this week for Everton's Jarrad Branthwaite. We're talking about really Thomas Frank and the Mbuemo situations. Obviously, some reports that have come out quite recently from Fabrizio Romano, stating that Spurs, even though maybe getting Thomas Frank does not mean they are first in the race to sign Mbuemo. And there's a few other little bits and bobs to come out, Eze, Mbuemo, all that stuff. You know what we always do. But we'll jump in and we'll talk about it. Morning, Sonia, Steve, Spurs, Jake, how are we all? Yeah, it's been obviously a real whirlwind ride the last sort of few days, obviously, as being Spurs fans. Look, this week I expect Thomas Frank to be announced as Spurs manager. All things sort of wrapped up. He wants Spurs. He wants to leave Brentford for Spurs. Personal terms won't be an issue. It's just sorting out the release clause side of things. No doubt Spurs are only wanting to pay 25 quid and Brentford going, well, no, we want the money that we want, you know. And so hopefully this week they sort it. The longer it goes, the further behind we fall in terms of the transfer market. Because obviously we know technically tomorrow, I think it is, the window shuts for 6 days and the reopens for its actual summer transfer window. So we want them in. We want this done because, like I said, the longer we leave it, the more we are going to fall behind in this transfer window. And hopefully, you know, I know Thomas Frank he likes some of the Spurs players. He thinks highly of some Spurs players, and I know a lot of the Spurs players he wanted at Brentford, but we ended up signing. It's one of those that, you know, let's not make him fight a fight that he shouldn't need to fight, you know. Sorry, I just turned my light on because I just realised it wasn't there. But anyway, let's jump in and let's start with a little bit of Jarrad Branthwaite flavoured news. So from the Mail Sport, Tottenham expected to formalise their interest in Jarrad Branthwaite this week. Now, on Branthwaite, like I said last time I spoke about Jarrad Branthwaite, actually, he is a guy who I think there's a lot of talent there. He's a guy who would, I mean, the irony is now, it's not to say he would suit Ange. You know, I've been 2 years saying, does X suit Ange? And now I have to kind of switch that around and go, does player X suit Frank Ball? You know, and I think, look, Jarrad Branthwaite has so much talent. You know, he is athletic. He's quite a big guy as well, but he's athletic, left-footed, can play out from the back. He's experienced in Premier League football now. He's had 2 years at Everton in the top flight, you know, especially the year before playing so much football. And obviously, last summer was a summer when Manchester United were lurking. And last summer, yeah, I think Everton wanted about 70 million on Jarrad Branthwaite, which, look, I don't blame them because obviously they were looking at it going, we don't want to lose him, but if we're going to lose him, let's make it really worth our while with FFP and all that stuff. But he's 22 years old. He turns 23 in, but actually, sorry, at the end of this month, in about 18 days, he turns 23. His contract is for 2 more years, but has the option to extend for a further year. So again, you don't have a ton of you don't really have a ton of control over this deal. Everton still hold, you know, all the cards really. You know, he played 33 times this season as well. He's capped England. He's capped by England now. He's had 1 cap playing for England. I just want to see how many games he's actually played for Everton. Sorry, 86 played for Everton. Now playing in the top flight football. Obviously, I know there's that report. Spurs, I think Paul O'Keefe was saying Spurs are going to be looking at players from 23 to 27. In reality, I don't think we should be pigeonholing ourselves into a 4-year window. No, I use the Garnacho one as an example. It doesn't mean we're going to sign him. You know, obviously now because there's a new manager, targets could evidently change. But the reason why I use the Garnacho example is because Garnacho is in his young 20s. You think, oh, he's still inexperienced. He's played a lot of football for Manchester United already. He has more experience than players who are 27 coming into the Premier League. You think of the players that are coming in from, the Championship. Think of Burnley, Sunderland, and Leeds. There's a few of those guys who are coming up who might be really talented, but don't have half the experience that Garnacho does, even though he's years younger than them. So that's why I'm saying let's not pigeonhole ourselves into 23, 27-year-olds, because I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Turning our nose up at players just because they're 22 doesn't really make any sense, So I don't think that's the case personally. I actually think Spurs are looking at all across the board personally. More al dente, how are we? Why can't we pay proper wages? It depends on how you define proper wages. Morning, Sean, Janice, Sonia, EZ, Joshua, Jacob, how are we all? So look, there's that on Branthwaite. I hope we are in Branthwaite. And obviously, Spurs have a homegrown situation. I wouldn't call it an issue. I think people who are calling it an issue are probably overdoing it ever so slightly. It'd be an issue if it's August 19th and we still need to get 2 in, right? We're June 9th. There's a lot of time to fix and to solve a homegrown issue, which I think they will. But, if you weren't aware, that's why they're linked to players like Angel Gomez. That's why they're linked to Branthwaite, Tamori, Mbuemo, Eze, Dibbling. There's so many that you link to, and that's because it's homegrown, and that's what they're caring about, and that's what they're trying to fix. So they'll fix that this summer. I'm not worried about that personally. But then again, you could also say that's probably why they were thinking about players like Gallagher last summer and Eze last summer is, hey, we might have a few drop off this season. Let's try and get ahead of the game. It's what competent sides do. Our Spurs that. More that comes out about Bryan Mbuemo, though, because Bryan Mbuemo, obviously, he's Thomas Frank's guy. And there was a few people that went, why we shouldn't try and get players that played for the manager at his old club. And I very much disagree. Don't get me wrong, I don't want 20 of them. But when it's the star player who suits what Thomas Frank is trying to do, we shouldn't turn our nose up at it just because he plays at a lower league club. And technically, he's higher in the league, but you know what I mean? What is deemed a lesser club, right? But look, they are looking at Thomas. They are looking at Thomas Frank, obviously, but they are 100% looking at Bryan Mbuemo. What they want to do is get Thomas Frank done first and then to move on to Mbuemo. They are alerted by, obviously, the fact that Thomas Frank helped build what you see of Bryan Mbuemo right this second. But Fabrizio Romano was talking about it and said that Bryan Mbuemo is still waiting for Manchester United as the priority. Thomas Frank is close to Spurs, so we'll see what happens if he joins. But Mbuemo at the moment is waiting to see what happens with Manchester United. And I was doing a little bit of digging onto Manchester United's situation at the moment, right? I was looking at it, and it was about the Gyökeres deal. And I think it was Fabrizio Romano who sort of said, oh, had they won the Europa League, that would have paid, in theory, the money they needed for Gyökeres. So, obviously, now that's sort of about 65 million. Let's say 50 million. There's 50 million there and then to go and buy a player for Spurs, apparently. Just keeping that in the back of our minds, because obviously at some point in this window, we'll be told that it's a really tough window and we've fallen hard on some targets, like we always are fed. Like, you could be the biggest levy-in guy. So much PR spin comes out this summer. Oh, it's been a difficult summer. We've tried our best. This is a summer that, especially in this community and in this channel and this guy, we are very much going to be holding what they say, not going to be reactionary. We're going to be thorough with what they say, because I don't believe for a second this should be a hard window. There's Champions League football. There's a new manager. There's players that you can cash in on. We should be actually doing quite a bit this summer. And the amount, by the way, what I love is you'll get people that go, look at all the money we owe on transfers. So are you telling me that no other club owes money on transfers? Are you telling me that Manchester United, who are crippled with debt that's worse than ours in theory, and they don't have a stadium really that can hold events and things like that? Yes, I know they do more in revenue, but they pay on more on wages, they pay more on transfer fees, right? It's all comparative. I don't want to hear that it's a difficult summer and we owe money. I think that's a really lame and lazy excuse. That is a very superficial this, but actually, if you dig deeper, you're telling me Chelsea owe no money on all of their that 1.5 billion they spent on transfers? I can promise you they do. Liverpool spending 250 odd ish million pounds this summer. They owe money on transfers still. City owe money on transfers. You know, Marmoush was signed in January. Gonzalez, they spent a lot of money in that January transfer window. Arsenal spent 100 million on Declan Rice. They owe money there. So what we need to be is a community that is very much aware that, yes, as we do owe money on transfers, that should not stop us having a good window, because when has it stopped any other team? It hasn't. That's the answer. There you go. It's never stopped a team doing good business. Spurs should have no excuses for that. Chelsea had no European football for years, right? They actually turn over less money than we do, by the way. That's another thing. We are 8th. They are 9th. No, we're 9th. I think they're 10th. I think Arsenal 8th now. So either that or Arsenal 7th, we're 8th and Chelsea are 9th. Something like that. It's one of the two, right? We turn over more money than them. They spent 1.5, 1.6 billion in the space of about 2 years. They don't have a stadium that pays for itself with events and NFL, and they don't have an F1 track. They don't have all these things. So let's not give excuses to higher ups when quite evidently they have shown they don't really have a clue at times what they're doing. I'm going to be honest. And I'm not slagging off Daniel Levy, because it isn't, as much as he has been there and he's a common denominator and he does deserve a absolute massive lion's share of the blame. You can put the blame at Fabio Paratici's door. You could, not all of it, but you can put some of it at his door. His inability to sell players. The loan with obligation, the loan with options to buy that just delays transfers every single year. We've been told, by the way, we have been told the Matisse Tell money, it's there. It does not affect this summer's window. I bet you at some point this window, they'll say, well, they had to buy Matisse Tell. That takes away from this window, even though we've been told it doesn't matter. So just back your minds. Always remember these things, because when it does come to the time in July 9th, July 27th, August 5th, whenever it may be, when they go, it's been a difficult window, things happening, and, we're not going to make excuses anymore. We're not going to let them off the table. We're not going to let off with anything like this. If they have another summer like last summer, trust me, more than just, the average Joe will be out of a job. Because last summer's window, like Johan Lang would be sacked, in my opinion, because if you're selling experienced players like this summer, if he sells Basuma and Richie and replaces them with two 17-year-olds, sack the guy now, in my opinion, because he can't seem to find that balance. And then don't bring in Paratici, because the guy can't find the balance either. Together they should, but will they work together? We do have a club trained issue, but let's be honest, we can't do much about that because of the regime before Paratici and the Paratici regime themselves not bringing through enough quality in the academy. There's not a lot we can do. You can sign Kyle Walker-Peters. Okay, sure. And that will tick a homegrown and academy box. But look at the academy for the last 10 years. That players that are academy trained, how many would actually still be in this Spurs squads? We sold Oliver Winks, 27.5 million. We sold Harry Winks, not Oliver Winks, Oliver Skip. We sold Harry Winks. Harry Kane's the only one that would truly, truly make the squad, other than, maybe a Kyle Walker-Peters as a rotational option. So our European squad this year is going to suffer. I will be there. I will be saying it out the door very, very early. Our European squad this summer will suffer. We will not have a full European squad because we do not have those academy trained players. Again, remember, because Mikey Moore or Jamie Donnelly or Will Lancashire are part of the academy, it does not mean in Europe's eyes they are academy trained players. Okay? Just remember that. Because even though in theory they're academy trained players, Europe do not consider them academy trained players because they've not got the body of work. So, because people seem to kind of come in and go to me, no, we've got just include Donnelly and just include this guy. I love your enthusiasm. you are wrong. It doesn't work like that. I recommend just literally go off and Googling it. How does a player become academy trained in Europe and European competitions' eyes? Once you read it, you'll go, yeah, okay, they don't count. It doesn't mean they can't count in the future. They just don't count now. That's the thing. Do I think Mbuemo is good enough for the Champions League and could do it at a bigger and better club? I mean, look at his stats this year. He was one of the best players in the Premier League this season. There's always a risk when you sign a player. It doesn't matter who the player is. There's always going to be a risk. You know, you could be signing. I mean, look. For example, Manchester United were close to signing Frenkie de Jong. Right? He could have flopped. He's a good player, but he could flop. All transfers, no matter what the size of them are, can flop. I mean, look at Jed Spence. Didn't work out for years, and now it looks like it sort of has worked out. So I think he could do it, though. Yeah, I think he could do it. We're going to talk about Eze and Mbuemo in a minute. We'll talk about it in a minute, all right? Is Lang staying? Yes, Lang is staying. Mun is going. Lang is staying because Prachi will not be a guy that's allowed to run a football club just yet due to the trial that's happening in August. So he can still be a consultant, but he won't be able to run a club for a transfer market. So Lang has to stay. You know. Morning, Bobby. How are you, mate? So anyway, we'll move on. There's still more to talk about. Talking though a little bit about Eze and Mbuemo. Now, I just realized I got cooked in the Discord, Jess. I've got to bring that in. But no, on Mbuemo, we know the root reports they are interested in Mbuemo. We know that. Now, they would like to do a deal surrounding Eberechi Eze this summer. I think Paul O'Keefe was the one that's saying this. They would like to do a deal for Eze this summer, but obviously they've already got it out there early doors. Oh, that release clause. Yeah, that release clause, huh? That release clause. The thing that I've always talked about, and the thing that I've always said that the earlier you approach Crystal Palace, the more likely they might come to the table and talk about the release clause. Doesn't mean they're going to, but it's factually the situation, isn't it? Before you speak to before you speak to someone who's about to sell something, if you get to them about something else and they haven't sold something else, they might talk to you and go, "Well, what are you thinking then?" You know, you have a little bit of a haggle. What are you thinking? Well, I know you want, 68 quid. Happy to pay that, by the way. And that's how you do it, right? But obviously, Palace this summer are probably going to sell Mark Guay because he's on his last year of his deal. We know Bayern Munich are interested. Spurs are interested, but apparently it's not an easy deal. We're not getting Mark Guay. I'm going to be out there and say that early doors. I don't think we're going to get Mark Guay. I think with centre backs, it'll be Branthwaite, and then it'll end up being Tomori, no doubt, because Tomori ends up being a player that's going to cost half the amount that Branthwaite would. You know what we're like. But with Eze, yeah, the release clause is what the release clause is. You know, there's nothing you can change about it. But like I said, the earlier you get to Crystal Palace and say, look, we want Eze, the fee that you want, fine, we can work with. We just want to spread it out over, that big lump sum. Let's spread it out over 2 years. Yeah, let's spread it out over 3 years, whatever it might be, right? They're way more likely to do it if you get to them before they sell Mark Guay. I've repeated that so many times. Got a really itchy nose. Apologies. All right. I was dusting earlier. So evidently there's dust on me. That you do that early on, you will have an opportunity. Well, you'll have more of a chance. I mean, it's going to be guaranteed because Crystal Palace will go. They might even go, well, no, we're going to sell Mark Guay. Like, we'll just wait for that. But actually, they're probably going to say, oh, we haven't sold Mark Guay just yet. Okay, well, what are you thinking? And and all that stuff. But I think they may have made even a gentleman's agreement with Eze to say, let's stay for an extra year. We'll try and get you moved on next summer. Because it happens with every club when it comes to selling their bigger names. We did it twice alone with Modric and Bale. It isn't shocking. It isn't shocking, right? But there is a situation where Eze's deal may not happen because they may actually try and get Brian Mbuemo instead. So I've always said with Spurs, they sign one marquee name and then they try and sign 3 or 4 players that are a little bit cheaper, which when you are a squad that has severely lacked talent, and this isn't, by the way, a pro-Ange thing or anything like that, this squad has severely lacked talent in terms of rotational options for a long time. Redknapp never had it, although Redknapp was hell-bent on running every player into the ground at times. He never had the options to rotate at times. I think Poch, even in what people find our golden era, a golden era of winning nothing, by the way, is kind of a mad thing to say. He never had the rotational options that we wanted. I don't think Conte never did. Mourinho never did. Nuno never did. Although I find it hard to say Nuno. He was only here for a cup of coffee. But you know what I mean. None of them ever did. Ange never did, right? That's why they go and sign one marquee name. So they're like, say, for example, Eze's the guy. He's the guy. He's the marquee guy, right? And Thomas Frank wants him. That's the other key thing. Because if Thomas Frank doesn't want him, we shouldn't be signing him. We shouldn't be signing him. As much as I'm sitting here going, oh, I really like Eberechi Eze. If Thomas Frank doesn't want him, we shouldn't go anywhere near him. Yes, okay, the club wants to sign players for the club, and we know what this club's all about. We try and sign players who are either cheap or super marketable, that then you'll make their money on the cash flow side of things because you market these players, right? But in reality, we should be trying to sign players through the data-given approach that, Daniel Levy and all those people have absolutely raved about this data approach. And Johan Lang was brought in to use this data approach. We should be using it to get players for Thomas Frank. And have Thomas Frank having, a power in the room to say, I really like this guy. He suits the system. I'm going to be using him like X, Y, and Z. And then we should be going, okay, yeah, the data looks pretty good. Let's go and try and get him. Instead, we're extending Ben Davies. We've not got a manager. Now, maybe Thomas Frank went, yeah, fine, extend him. Or maybe the club are going, look, we're extending him because we're going to sell him. It's still the club making all decisions. The manager, kind of being, playing a game of poker, being dealt a hand, and then the dealer going, right, yeah, okay, so I'm going to fold for you, or I'm going to raise, Let the manager have a say in the market and try and then to actually supply him with what he needs. We didn't do it with all previous managers. Because if we did, right now, we'd see a blonde guy who currently plays in Madrid playing for Tottenham. Eberechi Eze would be a Spurs player last summer. Because those are the players that Ange wanted. It was reported. He wanted Gallagher, he wanted Ange, and he was told they're too expensive. So, look, just putting it out there. If you're going to get Thomas Frank, let's not have him fight a fight with one arm tied behind his back. Give him an opportunity. Let him show you he can do it. We don't technically know if he can, but then again, you don't technically know if any manager could do it. We've been linked to Marco Silva. That's the other one, right? He could come in and do a great job, but we don't truly know. And that's the key thing. Even though you don't truly know, you give them the opportunity to show you that they can. You give them a fair chance and a fair fight. We've never truly done it. And that's the worrying thing about it all. Can we get both Mbuemo and Eze? Technically, yes. Would we? No. Danso is cheapest option. Dragishin will run again soon. Well, look, I think let's sort of talk about Dragishin, to be honest. Dragishin, I think under Thomas Frank, where we probably would play a bit of a deeper line. I think he would improve. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, some Spurs fans who just sit on their backsides on their sofas, who have never played a game of football in their lives, telling you that Radu Dragishin is a terrible footballer. Of course, their opinions and everything are factual, and they know way more than footballers. They know way more than coaches. They know way more than any footballing professional, of course, because they sit on their backsides on the sofa and they sit and tweet about things. It's good. I use their opinions as gospel, and I kind of ignore every football professional about what they say about a player, right? I think Radu Dragusin will get better. Again, we talk about Radu and those sort of players who are younger, have not had tons of top flight, experience. It's something that we've talked about with players coming in this summer, is they want top flight experience in the players they're looking to get this summer. I think Dragusin will improve. I also think he'll probably play one game once he comes back from his ACL injury, and fans will call him crap again, because obviously those fans who call him crap, who sit on their backsides on Twitter, who are miserable human beings, they've played football at top level. They've had an ACL injury. They know you can come back and be 100% straight away. I've had an ACL injury and I'm not a top flight footballer. It has taken me a very long time to get past that. And I don't think I'm truly even past it. Now, he obviously is going to have a ton of support surrounding the medical team, which you hope at some point gets to a level where it's just average. That'd be nice. And they'll help him get back to a better level and going forward. But, I've got faith in players like Radu. All the physical gifts are there. Genuinely, I've always said if he was about 10% better on the ball, the amount of Spurs fans that would go, actually, he's pretty good. Like, I look at big Kev Danso. I think that's a player and a half there. So, but it's being patient. And I've said it about Thomas Frank, who I still expect to be the new manager, by the way. I'm just kind of assuming he is. You need to be patient. All of you, me included, every miserable person on Twitter who thinks because what they've tweeted is gospel and the arrogance that some of them have. You need to give Thomas Frank months. You don't give him 2 games and go, well, he lost both games. Like, let's say we lost in the Super Cup against PSG. Oh, he's rubbish. It's PSG. It's the best football team in the world. They're incredible. I watched the game last night, watching Vitinha, watching Fabian, watching Nuno Mendes, who's the best left back in the world, and it's not even close to second. I don't know who you think second is, but whoever that is, nowhere near that guy. I'm watching Goncalo Ramos come off the bench. I'm watching all these unbelievable PSG players. We are going into that Super Cup as massive underdogs. And if we lose that game, I will not murder Thomas Frank from losing that game. I won't. I'll be real with you. Now, it's a cup final. Anything can happen. We all understand that. We all know that. But you do kind of need to give Thomas Frank a real proper run of games where you go, okay, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some difficult times. Give him the opportunity to go through that. Let him work out and iron out the kinks. We'll be better in the long run for that. So all I'm calling for is patience when it comes to Thomas Frank, because we don't give patience to footballers. We don't give patience to managers at Tottenham. We demand that they win the Premier League 3 games into the season. When have we won a Premier League? So I hope even if you're one of those people who thinks we should probably win the quadruple this season, you just give your head a little wobble, recognize that it's a new manager. I said this about Inzaghi, who I think is a phenomenal coach. If we brought in Inzaghi, I would expect him to be given a massive runway of allowing to get through some difficult times, because it's a new system. Players are playing a new system. There's a new coach. There's new terminology they need to learn. There's new ways of training. There's new ways of probably eating. And it's all the things that you don't see and I don't see that they go through on a day-to-day basis. It's not they rock up on a Saturday at 3:00, put their boots on and play. Thomas Frank doesn't rock up like a Sunday league coach smoking a cigarette on the sidelines going, look, if you're not playing good enough, I'll hook you on 20 minutes in, like they do in Sunday league, So be patient. Be patient is all I'm saying. Frank apparently had slow starts when he started in the Championship and then again in the Premier League when they came up. We'll say, to be fair, they won their first game in the Premier League, didn't they? They beat Arsenal. It was a Friday night game. I swear they beat Arsenal. Or they drew against Arsenal. It was one of the two. It was at home. I remember it. I was watching it in the pub with 2 Chelsea fans. That was a weird combo. They beat Arsenal. There you go. Yeah. So what I would say is as well, let's be real here. And it's not a dig against Brentford. And I don't think any Brentford fan who is genuine would get angry about this. It's Tottenham. It's Brentford. Tottenham's player quality is higher than Brentford's. The success should start quicker than it would at Brentford. That's all. Okay. That's all. And it's not a dig against Brentford because I think Brentford are a decent team, and I've never had beef with Brentford as a football club or anything like that. It's just the law of the land, you know. One team is not new to the Premier League, but they've only been up sort of a handful of years. One team is a European champion, played in Champions League finals, all in the space of the last 6 years. So, you know, I would expect him to. I'd expect some results at first, but I also expect there'll be a few games where we lose a game and you go, how the hell did we lose that game? Or why did we lose that game? And I expect that to happen. I will be absolutely going, well, it's what happens when you get a new manager normally. It's the irony that had Ange finished fifth in his first season, but like lost 5 of his first 10 games, everyone would be going, oh, he's not too bad. It's the irony that he had that first 10 games and it was a whirlwind, you know? So I'm going to be very patient with Thomas Frank. I hope you are as well. If you're not, give yourself a little wobble in the head because you need to have one, all right? And yeah, Thomas Frank loves a lot of the footballers we have. You know, he complimented Spurs many a times. No, I get it, Diggers. I get it. You're all good. Why can't you understand Mbuemo wants to go to Manchester United? I can give you about 250,000 reasons why. It's called money. Money talks. This myth of Champions League football is an absolute myth. Oh, I've got Champions League football. I'll offer you 100 grand a week. That's great. This team's offering me 200 grand a week. And because they're, Manchester United, they're a bigger club than Tottenham. Their ability to market me as a footballer is leaps and bounds ahead of what Tottenham will do. The money is ridiculous. And just think of it this way. Look at Sky Sports, look at TNT and all those, football broadcasters. How many of those pundits played for Man United? Sky Sports got Roy Keane, right? Gary Neville. There's obviously more. So there's Scholes, there's Hargreaves, there's Ferdinand, Berbatov at times. They can market. They are the Dallas Cowboys. American fans will back me on here. They're the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys can set you up for post-football success because they can market you. They can market you in such a way that you will have that. Man United, the exact same. So that's why. Also, let's be real. Just because we've beaten them in a European final for a Europa League, if you subtract that away, what have we won in the last 17 years? What have they won in the last 17 years? They're going to pay you more. You're more likely to win things. Okay, it's a bit toxic at times, but it's still Manchester United. It's still one of the biggest clubs in the world. Top 5 biggest clubs in the world. I know there's a massive gap between Real Madrid and everyone else at the moment, but, they're in that second tier with, your Barcelonas and things like your Bayern Munich's probably, So that's why. It's quite simple. Big team, how are you? At least decision was made in regards to Ange. Now we can look forward to a new season under new manager. Thank you for an epic league run, Ange. Yeah. We'll all be grateful towards Ange and what he's done. Reading Basuma's post this morning, that was heavy. That was, I knew the players loved him, but it really shows the last sort of week how much they've loved him. It's really mental. But we've moved forward now with a new manager. We move forward now with a new way of thinking. Obviously, this season, Champions League football back at the lane. Can't wait for that. Super Cup. How many times are you going to say as a Spurs fan, I watched my team play in the Super Cup because we won a European trophy? This will be my first time in nearly 4 decades. It'll be the first time in quite a long time for fans that even watched the last time we won a European trophy. So make the most of it. I will. And the beauty is Thomas Frank has been set up with Champions League football, the Super Cup, with a squad of players that he actually quite likes. He has been set up with some success. There are things that Thomas Frank will sit there and work with and he'll like. It helps that he's going to get a nice big pay raise as well from Brentford to Spurs. As much as we think we don't pay wages, we've always not skimped out on managers and what we pay managers. They've always done very well. The idea is we pay managers such an amount because the idea is then to say, well, look, you'll get more out of the players because we pay you more. We're going to get better coaches. with a lesser squad, thinking that you'll drag those players up and above where they actually are. It's what we always do at Spurs. Conte's paid 15 mil a year. Like, he was what? I think Pep and Klopp were the only two managers paid more than him at the time in the Premier League. Now, Simeone's like here. Then it's like Pep. Like, the amount Simeone earns is ridiculous from Atletico. No wonder he's never going to leave. I'd never leave the money that I'd earn at Atletico if I was a manager. So that's what we always do. To be fair, Frank played attacking football in the Championship, winning to survive in the Premier League. Hope he gets more attacking at Spurs. He's a good attacking manager. He is. You know, we're going to end up getting Noosa for our attack, which I'd never dreamt of. Wish I'd never dreamt of Cherky, Eze, or Simmons. It's early doors, mate. It's early doors. You've already got the tattoo. Jesus Christ. Ange tips which McKenna joins Brentford. No. Apparently he has Premier League interest, Ange. It might be from Brentford. You know, you never know. It could be from Brentford, but I think Ange would be able to get another Premier League job. Yes, absolutely. I would even say there's probably some national teams that look at Ange and go, you know, that's something there to think about. Having had international experience, we can see international football is massive. Look at Poch and how he's doing with the US at the moment. He's really struggling. I think Ange, Italy. I think Italy are going to get Ranieri, by the way, which I absolutely love. Just minus his time at Chelsea and Leicester aside, he was phenomenal last season with Roma. Like, I think had he taken over Roma a couple of weeks earlier, they'd have made Champions League football. They lost out on the last game of the season. They just ran. Basically, what it is with Roma is they just ran out of time. Had an extra couple of weeks, they probably would have made Champions League football. Send him to Italy. Why the hell not? Why the hell not, you know? Yeah, we're going to talk about Davies and Wrexham in just a second. If we beat PSG, the pressure on Frank at the start of the season will be intense. Yeah, people will start to lose their heads to say, oh my God, we beat PSG. We're the Super Cup champions. Right, that's it. We should win Champions League now. It's like, sorry? You know, so Leeds are looking at Ange. I've got my Leeds fan that I was talking about all through the loan round up the season. He's like, yeah, I'll have a bit of Ange. It reminds them of Bielsa, and they love Bielsa at Leeds. They're not really that keen on Daniel Farke at the moment as well, so it makes sense for them, you know. And you know, Ange was wanted at Brighton. Yeah, absolutely, he was. But I think Hertzler will probably be around for the long run. Hertzler is someone that, like, because he's young, he doesn't need to jump to the big job straight away. Although I think Brighton fans are at times a little bit iffy with Hertzler, so we'll see. We'll see. Evan Dicker. Yeah, love it. Did a video on him about 4 years ago and we linked to him again. We're just regurgitating such old transfer news, you know. Yeah, Joe Mack, I agree. Simpel, how are you? Yeah, so Ben Davies. Right, so obviously, if you're not aware, Ben Davies had the option to extend for a year picked up. So he now has a contract until the summer of 2026, a bit like Heung-Min Son in a way. Now, on Davies, it's not guaranteed that he's going to be here. Supposedly so, there's still an opportunity that he might be sold and he might be allowed to leave. And Wrexham are the team that's loud about this. And I know a lot of you go, there's Welsh rivalry, there's this, that, the other. Regardless, the rumours and reports are there. Davies to Wrexham is something that isn't dying down. It is still something that is continuing to pick up steam. They want a modest fee. I think they probably go, look, give us 2.5 to 5 mil, something in there. You take that off your pot, you know. It's kind of my thinking about that. You know, I know a lot of people go, oh, he's great in the dressing room. It's this, that, and the other. He's great in the dressing room when you need to build the dressing room. You know, you need to build camaraderie. You need to build, you know, the togetherness. They have the togetherness. They've done that now. They shouldn't need to do it again. Like James Maddison, you know, and those sort of senior players should take up ownership of the idea of, hey, new player comes in, they get welcomed, we'll spend the time with them, We're going to, develop them as humans into this change room, into this change room's personality. You shouldn't need to carry a 32-year-old now to do that when they've had 2 years of being together as a group, So I still think I still think you have to look to move on from him. I really do. I think you would be absolutely foolish to hold on to him. I think you'd be foolish, especially because holding on to him when you might be, lower on the availability on the player spots in the squad, it'd be foolish in my opinion. And it's just the time. It's just the right time to move on. Yeah. We know Thomas Frank's agreed to join Spurs. We know. We know. It's now, I said at the start of the video, right at the start, so obviously some of you may have missed it. It's now just down to the release clause. That's all. But yeah, on Davies, I just think it's the right time to move on. Take that squad spot. Replace him with someone younger. The way I always look at it is, I've said actually quite a few times over the last few years, don't look at someone who's going to be here for a year to 2 years. It might be the right time to move on for them. Get someone who's going to be here for 4, 5, 6 years. I've always said about contracts, it's the big thing in American sports. Don't give a player a contract, because we're going to talk about Bentancur in a second. Don't give a player a contract for what they've done. You are in theory monetarily rewarding them for that, but you're also looking at it going, yeah, but we also are paying you for this level of performances. And if they want this as a contract, but they're going to give you this, then you move on from them because you're not going to get the value for money. And that's the attitude that I have. I wouldn't give Heung-Min Son a 5-year deal. When we were talking about contracts, I think it was either the season before last. I think it was the season before last. I said 2 years with an option for 1. So last year would have been the first one. This year would be the second one. And the option for 1, I always thought that's what we would do. So that's my attitude when it comes to Ben Davies. Ben Davies is 1 more year, max. And I don't even think it's like a situation where he's going to give you tons of great quality performances, because let's be real, he's 32, he's injury prone, and he has issues. So just be smarter to leave. He joined having we not won anything for ages. He leaves a European champion. Get your money and waltz on. You know what I mean? I've always said as well, like in American sports, you move off a player a year too early than a year too late. And this is probably a year too late anyway for Davies, but it's the right time. Take his squad spot, get someone else in who's going to be here for 4, 5, 6 years, and away you go. And also the way I look at it is the centre-back room, we don't know what's happening with Romero. If I'm honest, I still expect Romero to leave, which would be gutting because I think he's an absolute world-class footballer. You might not. I don't really care. I'm not going to change my mind on that, so don't bother trying to say to me, hey, where's the evidence that he is? All right? How you're not going to change your opinion, I'm not going to change mine on it. You might need to add in that centre-back room because you need then to sort the centre-back room out going forwards. I still think, I think Kyle Walker-Peters rumours will probably pick up in the next couple of weeks. I know it's not the sexy move for people, but they'll also be looking at it going, he's academy trains. It's going to help for European football. I also think the other thing as well, the amount of fans that go, that player doesn't understand Tottenham, this, that, and the other. And then we get linked to a player that you play for Tottenham. It's like, no. It's like, we can't. Your argument doesn't really make any sense, So there's that. On Bentancur, apparently it's, again, reported that he will be expecting to sign the new contract. We'll see about that. Again, I know he was very pro Ange. Yeah, he's very pro Ange. I thought he might head off, but apparently signing a new deal again. Is it what Thomas Frank wants? Because if Thomas Frank didn't want Bentancur, I would then say, right, you sell Bentancur. You give the manager autonomy to say, this is what I want. I'm not going to use these players. You move them on. It's the same with Romero. Like, be real, I'll say it as well. Romero, if Thomas Frank didn't want Romero, which obviously it's not the case. Like, no manager will come in Spurs and go, no, I actually don't want your best centre back. I get rid of him. And at worst, for some people, he's our second best centre back. No, I don't want that guy. Get rid of him. Oh, no. Oh, God, no. Why would I want any form of quality in this squad? Get rid of him. Bring in a guy who's 20 million and not as good. You know, that's what I'd want. The centre back room actually at Spurs isn't that bad. Yeah, I know some of you have this wet fetish around a back three. Spurs fans just love just going, oh, we've got a set formation. Let's just not do that. Let's just go and change the formation completely. Why would you do that? Just vibes. You know, I know that he might play a bit of a back three, but I also don't think the squad is there for the back three. We don't have two sets of wing backs. We don't have six centre backs. We don't have a squad for the back three. Now, every now and then, like we did with Ange, of course, because Ange never adjusted and changed anything, by the way. I get that because that's what people say to me. Ange would do it for the last sort of 10, 15 minutes to see out a victory in Czech's notes, European final. Good time to adjust and make changes. That's good. That, by the way, I can promise you that's going to rattle someone that's watched that back later. They probably pulled up the comment box, ready to start saying, and then they've heard this and gone, oh, he's mugging me off. A back three is every now and then. The squad is still assembled for a back four. Again, now you've got Pochettino, you've got Mourinho, Nuno, Conte, Ange players. A lot of them may not suit Thomas Frank. And that's why I'm saying Thomas Frank's going to need multiple years to get his squad. Are Spurs fans going to be patient for once? Some will, some won't. What do I think of Thomas Frank and how the team will form? I like Thomas Frank as a coach. I think he's a good coach. I say he will make Europe next year. I don't think he'll make the Champions League. I think there's going to be, at some point in the season, a loss of like 4 games in a row, 3 wins in 10 sort of thing. I think somewhere like 6th, 7th this season. I've got a feeling that we're not going to win anything this season. I think we finished 6th, 7th, which in Daniel Levy's eyes is progression. Even though there's no Champions League football there, he'll still consider that progression, which is an interesting way of going about things, I guess. I think he gets that, and then we'll see. We'll get European football again next year via the Europa League or Conference League, which if we're in the Conference League, hopefully we don't stink it up like Conte does and we actually do something in it. And obviously if we're in the Europa League, hopefully we do the same thing what Ange's done, So that's my thinking on that. I think he'll have good times. There'll be bad times, like everything that you could expect. Let's just see if fans are patient enough to go through the bad times, If we show ambition in the chance will surely Romero stay. Yeah, it's not about just ambition. I think Romero's looked at the history of Daniel Levy and gone, this guy's a failure. I don't think he has the true love of this football club at heart. Romero said, didn't he, earlier in the season, like, we could compete with the big boys if we truly, truly wanted to, but the owner doesn't truly, truly want to. He just wants enough success for money. He didn't say that last bit. That's me adding it in. But yeah, Romero's like, we can compete. If the owner wanted to compete, we'd easily compete. That's why he was he supported Ange massively, But apparently Romero hated Ange, even though he verbally said how much he respected Ange and backed him. That was hilarious. Twitter just making things up and going, this is what's true. As much as I like Branthwaite, we need to spend the money on a 6, a winger, and another striker. Mate, we need a frigging centre-back. Richarlison and Solanke you have right now. Right now, this second, we have 3 centre-backs. Because then someone will go, but we have Vuskovic not signed. We have Phillips. Are you sitting there saying Phillips is the 4th centre-back going into next season? I guarantee you're not saying that. We need another centre-back. And actually, centre-back, winger, or another striker, mate, I'll be honest, left-back for me is ahead of all of them by distance as well. Left-back is the exact one that we need most for me. Look, you might disagree with me or not. Can I just point you to Destiny Doggy and his injury history? Ange's winner, Ramirez winner, absolutely. Will Frank have an injury list like October, November, December, January, and February? Well, hopefully they replace the medical team because that will help. That will help. Levy never shown a mission for one of our own to want to stay. He won't do it for Romero. Oh God, no. I'm sorry. You watched that video of the last game of the season when they're doing the walkarounds. His face when he realised he was getting booed. He was so angry. He'll take it out on the squad. He always does. He's always been renowned for taking things out on other people. You know. But hey, Coy's Daniel, you got your Tottenham back, eh? All that crap that he comes out with. When will Dragic come back? Later into this winter. You know, there's potential it's still next year. You know, the ACL injury, people say 6 to 9 months. It can be up to 12 months if there's issues. But I would say in the winter, at the earliest, I'd say October. But that's if like Dragic is just made of titanium. I would say between November and January is my guess. But then he won't be up to full speed until way into the spring. Like just because he's back and he's not injured anymore does not mean he will hit fifth gear. And anyone that thinks he'd hit fifth gear is just an absolute Looney Tune. He would need multiple months to get up to speed. Will he be able and afforded that time? Probably not, because we're Tottenham fans and we don't afford any player any time in the world, but he would need that. Leverkusen got Ten Hag, Schlotterbeck or Tapso, but one of them should do well. Good players. Neither of them will be leaving their clubs this summer. Board doesn't want seriously football manager at the club. They want to win. They want to win enough. They want to win enough. You know, Romero plays 6 games at Tottenham and only play well for 30% of them. Oh mate, no, I'm not having that. I'm gonna move on before that is absolutely gonna roll me through the roof. Yeah, he would need months and months and months to pick up some speed. You know, months. Bisek for Radu again. Would Inter want a guy who's just had an ACL injury and he's not going to be ready for up to speed until at least the spring at the earliest? They're not going to do that. They don't want to shoot themselves on the foot. You know, it took Bentancur ages to get to his old mojo back. I would argue for Bentancur, because of all the injuries and suspensions that some of our fans forget that we had, and he was a part of that. Obviously, he missed 6 weeks of football basically for Spurs. He wasn't right until we got healthy, which was the international break before this one. So he wasn't right until what, 4/5 of the way of the season. He wasn't right for the rest of the season before that. He wasn't right for the rest of the season the year previous. So yeah, Radu's going to need all the time in the world. I've said spring, and that's optimistic. It might even be the year after that he hits speed. You know, I'm going to give him the runway that he is needing and entitled to. We'll have some idiots on Twitter going, right, so Radu didn't score a hat-trick on his first game back in 5 minutes of football. Well, he's crap, isn't he? You'll see them. You'll see those people on Twitter. Just mute and block them because they are a problem in the fan base, if I'm honest. I don't mind you thinking that Radu's maybe not a great footballer, but if you are one of those people that post his injury is going to slag him off, I just don't take what you say seriously because you've never had an injury that requires you to come back and play afterwards. You never have. I did. I'm not right since, and I did my ACL 12 years ago. I was 17. I was younger than Radu. My body was probably healthier than Radu's at that time. I'm still not right now. I tore my meniscus at 21. Same knee. Still not right. And I'm not even a top flight footballer where it's required me to be, a top level athlete. I'm just your average Joe and I'm suffering. So that's why I think when it comes to injuries, I've got way more patience than maybe your average Joe does. Just because I think I kind of know how hard it is to, it's not just also sharpness and fitness. It's also a part of it. A part of it is also confidence. You don't have confidence in that knee. That takes time. Luke Shaw, when he broke his leg, he took years to get back to a level where Luke Shaw was a good left back again. So just be patient with some of these players, Ange is best because he has left best Mauricio fan. Even the biggest of doubters has respected Ange. Yeah, you'd hope they have. You'd hope they have. If people don't respect Ange after the European trophy, then they're just miserable gits, if I'm honest. And if they didn't have stem cells back then, recovery is much faster nowadays, mate. Sponsored ad. I need a sponsored ad for a company to come say, "We'll fix your knee." Great. Cheers, lads. You fix my knee. Sort me out. That'd be great stem cells, wouldn't it, for that? Frank's type defender. He'll cook under him. Dragon's a type defender. Maybe he's not a great footballer, but in a system that isn't so high, he'll do what he's good at, defending. I would still expect us to be a team that has more possession than not. I would still expect, and look, I just think he's young. I think the other thing is we forget about he's not played, years and years and years of top flight football. He's still young. He'll get better. He will get better, and he'll improve with the ball. He will. Peter, how are you? Do you think we get Mbuemo? No, I don't. I still think he'd go to Man United. If Allegri had access to stem cells, that would have been fantastic. That one still hurts. Radu was good in the Euros when he said when he sold. Had live and learn though. Yeah, he's 22. Live and learn, he's 22. Let's see on that one. Just check any more news because I've got stuff to do today. I've got to go do stuff. No, it's not. I don't. Chelsea. Right. Okay. Yeah. No. There's no more news. So some so-called fans were cheering louder at Ange's sacking the UEFA. Yeah. That's embarrassing. If you're anyone that celebrated him getting sacked more than you ever won the Europa League, you're not a football fan, in my opinion. Football's about winning trophies. That's all I give a damn about. But again, we also need to stop doing this as well. And this is everyone. This is people that love Ange and dislike Ange. Like, Ange is now gone. He is not coming back. He's not dead. Okay, he's not dead. I'm just saying, in the football club eyes, he won't come back. He will have, in 50 years' time, a bigger, legend status than some of your favourite Spurs managers ever did because they didn't win anything. But we also now need to look forward. And that's why I keep saying, Thomas Frank. That's what's here now. He's technically not signed, but you know what I mean? He's going to be signed. He is the Tottenham manager in my eyes until the deal falls through because Spurs, for some reason, don't want to pay his release clause. He isn't the Tottenham manager. We need to think about Thomas Frank. Let's forget about Ange in the nicest way. Forget about Ange. Think about Thomas Frank. Ange is a legend. If you don't think so, then I dread to think what your football standards are like. Oh, they're actually really good. I demand more success. Okay, Chief. All right, mate. There's grass out there if you want to go and touch it. Thomas Frank's the guy now, and there's no reason why Thomas Frank can't have success. That's the way I look at it. I've not got a glass that's half full. Let's be glass half full. There's no reason why Thomas Frank couldn't be successful. Hell, if he wins the Super Cup, he's a better manager than we've had most others in the last 20 years, barring Ange, because he'd have won something. There's no reason for that, and you never know. Ange might have opened the floodgates. We've won the Europa League. Next the next cup they're up for is a Super Cup. I don't think we're going to win it, by the way. Just putting it out there early doors. But you go into that game going, well, last time we were in a cup final, we won it, and it was a European Cup final. Why can't we win another one? And then I'm not saying you're going to win trophies every single season. You're going to win doubles and trebles and quadruples. But, you're then more competitive in cup finals. You're more competitive in cup runs. Maybe every few years now you're starting to win things. And it could all be down to that one Europa League final that the floodgates just get blown wide open and trophies start to follow a lot more frequently. Spurs is a cup side after all. We're a cup side after all, so you never know. All right, a few more comments. I think Bergvall will be good next season. He'll continue to improve. He will continue to improve. Patience. Oh, what's patience to fan bases? I think Ange is an even bigger legend for breaking the record of defeats, not being relegated. Game change saying, when will we join the others and paying wages we pay, which are less than before? If we get next level play, we won't be able to keep him. Maybe Bergvall. I've had the weekend salt. Now I'm ready for Frank to take us forward. Yeah, look. Weekend's done now. Looking ahead. It's, frankly, it's Thomas Frank time. Steve will like that. It's about him going forward now. full support. Even if you're a guy that loved Ange, it's now about full support. You back the next manager in the same way you backed Ange. You give that new manager the love that you had for Ange. You can still have it there. Just copy that and put it on Thomas Frank, Let's be a team. Let's be a fan base that is 100% behind a manager. There'll be holdouts. There'll be people that maybe aren't. We're going to ignore them. It's about Thomas Frank now. It's about Thomas Frank. It's about getting players for Thomas Frank. It's about getting this squad who, yes, they love Ange. It's now about Thomas Frank. And I think they could love Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank is about culture. That's what Ange is about. It's about culture. Let's continue to build on that culture. Let's continue to add quality players now to that culture. Let's do it now, Can we win a trophy next season? If yes, which? Probably the Carling or FA Cup. I don't think you're winning the Champions League or the Premier League. So one of those two. One of the domestic cups. Where do you think Ange will manage next season realistically? No idea, mate. No idea. He might even take a year off and just take a year off and do some TV work, He might go back to Australia and enjoy a little bit of peace and quiet. He would be more than deserving. Let's get behind Frank now. Absolutely. Yeah, let's not rush players like Jamie Donnelly and people like that. I would much prefer those players go out on loan if they're going to get regular football at a good club. If a player's going to leave, like a young player's going to go out on loan, if he goes to a team that's going to fight for the playoffs and the championship, I'd much rather that. Much rather that than us going, but he got 5 minutes in the League Cup for us. Yay. No, go out on loan. Play 40 games this season. Look at Jamie Donnelly at the start of the season. Look at Jamie Donnelly at the end of the season. Look at Josh Keeley at the start of the season. Look at Josh Keeley at the end of the season. They improved immensely. I could see Lancashire going alone. I could see Donnelly and I could see Keeley. I could see Phillips potentially. I could see them all going alone. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. And that actually getting them out on loan is still giving the youth an opportunity. Don't think that they have to play at Spurs, that opportunity, I don't care who our gaffer is. If we have injuries like we did the past season, we're effed. I know a manager's play style plays a big part, but our medical staff have to take some blame. That's why I continuously bring them up. Anyone that thinks it's all down to Ange, again, haven't got a Scooby, have they? If we do win a trophy, it'll be the Carling Cup or FA Cup. Yeah, so I don't mind that. Sorry, Steve. Interested to see what Frank can do. Hearing good things. Levy signs will determine my level of interest. Well, if he doesn't truly back Frank, we're just giving another manager a poison chalice to work with. As for international football, would I loan Mikey Moore this season? It depends. If Thomas Frank's not going to use him much, I think he would, by the way. But if he's not going to use him much, then yeah, he goes out on loan. I think he will get used. I think there are some Spurs fans because they look at Lamine Yamal and go, well, why isn't Mikey Moore playing 60 games a season? I kind of ignore what they say because that, for me, just shows they are so far up their own backsides. He's a 17-year-old kid. Even Ange said he played so much at the start of the season and through the mid part of the season. He then gets ill, by the way, for like 2-3 months. People conveniently forget because it doesn't fit their agenda and point that he obviously missed a quarter of the season. Ange said they wanted to spread out his minutes throughout the whole season. So that's why I'm kind of like, yeah, Mikey played tons of football last year. Great. I think Ajayi out on loan next season. Why not? Just because they're Spurs boys doesn't mean they have to continuously play at Spurs and then sit on the bench. I'd rather them get into the Championship and play 40 games a season because their development would be much bigger. You're going to play in a league where teams are going to kick you, teams are going to hit you, and how you cope with it physically is huge. I played rugby. I used to get hit at Saturday League football worse than I did at rugby. Will the club bring in players that be challenged in multiple competitions? History doesn't make you optimistic they'll ever deliver. Where's that? Will Yang will get minutes in pre-season. We'll see if he stays, though. He probably goes out on loan, if I'm guessing. Look forward to seeing what our new manager will be able to do with our squad. We'll get to see our players playing to their strengths. I think players played to their strengths regardless last season. Need goal scorers. How many chances did the forwards miss that changed the trajectory of so many games? Well, look, they're going to change attacking systems, so we'll see what happens there. We've got probably one of the better goal scoring wingers in the Premier League at the moment in Brennan Johnson. Could you do a little bit more in terms of supplying Slanky instead of him doing graveyard shifts? We'll see. We'll see. I want him to be used also, Andy, but I'm worried that he'll turn into Gavi with all the injury trouble. You've always got to be careful with young players, haven't you? You know, more kind of Frank, maybe not straight away, but in a few years, if Frank's giving time. If Frank's giving time, there you go. I'm going to do a video maybe once Frank has been announced on what to expect from Thomas Frank. There's no point doing it right this second. You gain nothing until he's announced, because you do it and it ends up being Claudio Ranieri as your manager, for example. It's a joke. He's not linked. It's a joke. Calm down. You've wasted time, you know, so let's see. Oh, yeah, if Solanke's used properly, he could easily score 20 plus. Yeah, but this season, I mean, look, I'm not going into it. Things weren't great for about 6 months of this season. He also missed time as well. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. But look, thank you all so much for joining me this morning. I really do appreciate all the likes, the comments, and the subscribes from this video. Obviously, back later if anything breaking happens. If not, I'll be back tomorrow, talk a lot more about Tottenham and things going on in Tottenham. Hopefully, at some point in the next 72 hours, Thomas Frank is announced and we can just move on and get started in our summer. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. Go enjoy the rest of your mornings, your afternoons, your evenings, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, I'll speak to you all soon. Talk a lot more about Tottenham. Take care. Peace.